I wanted to point something out. As you can see, lately the market's been really down. Started yesterday. So here we are in the middle of the January doldrums, as I've started to call them. But if you look at the charts, look at the charts next to most of these, if not all of them. See the big dip? Those big dips were last week's crash. You know, the correction last week that had everybody panicking, which corresponds, by the way, with the multi-year January charts, historical charts, which show that this is probably a pretty normal thing for crypto. We just notice it a lot more because many of us maybe weren't even in it last year. Didn't know that this was like a customary thing for the last at least 4 to 5 years, if you go back and check every chart for January. But just look at this last week. Almost every crypto on this thing had the major dip. And if you look at where we are now, yeah, there's a dip going on now. I don't know how long this will last. In some cases, it matches last week, but in most cases, it doesn't. You know, there are cases where it's kind of like a double dip, but it doesn't have that rapid down the way it did last week, where it was just like this rapid down. It's more of a gradual down this week. And while some of them, like here, Ardor is kind of really down, which might be a really good buy here when you think about it. Because it's even looks like it exceeded last week's down, but most of them don't. Most of them don't. See, this one's higher, higher, little higher, higher, little higher, little higher. You know, in some cases, like we have, you know, with our door here, it's lower, but in most cases, it's not as big a dip as last week. It's not as large a dip. So, you know, take that for what you will. You know, they're saying that the futures contracts end Friday the 26th, and that this is probably going to go on until then. Look, Wall Street's here now. I think it's actually probably a good sign that if you look at the charts over the last few years, you had this downturn in January anyway, and that was without any Wall Street futures stuff going on. So this year you have it, and everybody likes to point to it, but when you look at the history, January has always been a down month. I mean, yeah, it kind of, you know, if you want your portfolio to go up, this is a bummer. Seeing Ether below 1,000, when your portfolio total would really like to see it maybe at 1,400 or higher. But the good part is if you have money on the sidelines, you can get this stuff at a bargain. Everything's on sale right now. Think of it that way. I mean, look at NEO, 116. NEO is flirting with 200, you know, but it will again. This is probably very healthy. If you've got money on the side, you could pick these things up cheap, and that shouldn't be overlooked. That's what probably a lot of people are doing. VeChain's been surprisingly great. I mean, over here, it's still higher than when I bought it recently, and it's weathered this pretty well. If you look at the charts here, it's well above last week's dip. I wish I had more of this. Look, even Tether has this weird chart. Some people were psychic enough to pull out into Tether, so now they could hop back in now. More power to them. Verge is still at 09. I don't know what's going on with Verge. Verge, I had high hopes for this, but it's still a privacy coin, so it may surprise us. Look at it. Binance was around 20, 23, 25. It was doing very well, and now it's at 12. So anyway, I just wanted to point out that, you know, anybody could come to CoinMarketCap and look at this stuff, but I wanted to point out that these dips, in some cases, it looks like a double dip, but you know how you approach the dip, like, is different. Like even with the ones like, look at this Bitcoin, it's low. It's pretty much where the low was last week, but how you got there, like last week it was like, whoa, boom, roller coaster, but it came back up, and it's been a little more gradual getting down there this time. In most cases, this week's dip is higher than last week's dip for probably the majority of these cryptos, these altcoins. And if you look up at Bitcoin, it's still a little above last week's dip. Ethereum, it's a little bit above. It didn't have that radical, that giant abyss that we had last week. Most of the charts mirror this. The big fall last week, the gradual rise, and now a more gradual fall this week. So this gives me at least some confidence that this is just some normal January stuff. And then when you add in all the FUD, the Korea, the futures, and all this other garbage, we're actually lucky it's as good as it is. So sit tight. Don't be a weak hand. Don't sell low, because then you're going to lose money. Just hang tight. Things will get better. Later.